Hello, I'm Emily. I want to tell you about my life, how it all started so perfectly and then turned into something I never expected. I married Tom, a laid-back guy who ran a small Italian restaurant that his father left him. We lived in a cozy house that my grandma left me when she passed away. It was in this house we started our little family with our son, Jack. In the early days, Tom and I would sit on our back porch after Jack had gone to bed, talking about everything we wanted to do. "We'll save up, buy a big house, maybe have another kid," Tom would say, always with a beer in his hand. "Yeah, and Jack's going to have the best education we can afford. Maybe he'll go to college without needing to worry about student loans," I'd add, thinking about how my own student loans had been a burden for years. Things were good, simple, and happy. But as years passed, while I climbed up the ladder at work, Tom seemed content with just getting by with the restaurant. It didn't grow, it just stayed the same, cozy, but barely making enough. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, I tried to talk to him about it. "Tom, have you thought about maybe expanding the menu or doing some renovations to attract more customers?" Tom shrugged, scrubbing a plate a bit too hard. Why fix what isn't broken? We're doing fine." "But we could be doing better, Tom. Don't you want to grow the business?" I pressed, drying my hands on a towel. Tom set the plate down with a clatter, frustration clear on his face. "Why are you always pushing? Can't you just be happy with what we have? I'm tired of you always wanting more." His words stung, but I let it go for the moment. However, it wasn't just the restaurant that was the problem. As I became the main breadwinner, the tension grew. Tom spent more days at the restaurant, not really working, just escaping the house, and often he'd end up at his mother Susan's place when we argued. One particularly rough day, I decided to confront him about his frequent escapes to his mom's. "You ran off to your mom's again last night? Tom, when you're there, who do you think handles everything here?" He rolled his eyes, tossing his keys on the table. "Oh, come off it, Em. Mom understands me. Plus, she doesn't nag me about money or working more." That hurt, especially since I had been the one covering for his lack of income, even sending $700 to Susan every month to help her out. It was getting harder to keep up with all the bills and expenses. Later that week, I was on the phone with Susan, trying to explain the situation. "Susan, I'm doing what I can, but Tom needs to step up. We're struggling here." Instead of understanding, Susan lashed out. "Emily, you're his wife. It's your job to support him, not push him around. You're always after my boy to change. Can't you see you're the problem?" Her words were harsh, and I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "I am supporting him, Susan. More than you know. I send you money every month, remember? How can you call me the problem? You're a gold digger, that's what you are, always counting every penny," she shot back, before hanging up. As the night fell, I watched Tom retreat to the couch, beer in hand, lost in his phone, while I put Jack to bed, the weight of my conversation with his mother heavy on my shoulders. Life at home got tougher when Tom's restaurant hit rock bottom. He had to let go of his staff one by one, till it was just him tossing pizzas in a quiet corner of town. Soon, even the pizza didn't pull enough folks in to keep the lights on. The day he shut down for good, he came home looking defeated but with an edge of defiance in his eyes. "You know, Em, this isn't the end. It's just a bump," he said, trying to keep his voice steady as he took off his apron for the last time. I was sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out like a deck of bad cards. "A bump? Tom, the restaurant's closed. We need another income, not tomorrow, but now." He bristled at that, his pride wounded. "I'll find something, but I'm not just going to take any job. I've got my standards. I was a business owner, Em." "And what does that mean now, Tom? We need real money, not standards," I shot back, frustration boiling over. He just shook his head, muttering about not being any desk jockey at some company. "I have a degree, Emily. I'm looking for a chief's position, nothing less." I couldn't believe his audacity. Your business just tanked, and you think you can land at the top somewhere else just like that? I snapped, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. He didn't reply, just stormed out, probably to his mother's. That's how it was now. When things got tough, Tom vanished. The weekend brought no peace, only his mother, Susan, barging in with her own set of demands. She came just as I was setting up lunch, her timing as impeccable as her nerve. Emily, you need to talk to your bosses. Get Tom a good position at your place. He deserves it, she commanded, as if it were the most obvious solution. I laughed, despite myself. It was a harsh, short sound. Susan, that's not how it works. I started at the bottom and worked my way up. They don't just hand out top jobs, because I say so. She narrowed her eyes, her lips thinning. You just don't want him succeeding there. Afraid he might overshadow you, huh? Seriously? Tom walking into a senior role with no experience is not happening. And it's not about fear. It's about reality, I explained, slicing the tension with every chop of the salad knife. Lunch went on with a chilly air swirling around us. Tom was quiet, picking at his food, probably stewing over his own bruised ego and his mother's words. Tom's days became a blur of nothingness. He'd lounge around, beer in hand, glued to his phone, while I juggled work, house chores, and caring for our son, Jack. Each evening I came home to find the house a mess and dinner nowhere on the horizon. Tom, could you at least start dinner? I'm running on fumes here, I'd say as I dropped my bags, kicking off my shoes. He'd grunt, not taking his eyes off his phone. Why? You do it better. I'm tired too, you know. Tired from what? It burned me up inside, seeing him so idle, especially when Jack would tug at my sleeve, hungry and waiting. And Jack? Did you pick him up from school today? I asked one evening, already knowing the answer. No, your mom did. Forgot to tell you, he mumbled, barely audible over the TV. My mother, thankfully, lived nearby and had become my unplanned backup, ever since Tom had stopped bothering with even the smallest responsibilities. Tom, he's your son too. He needs you. I tried to keep my voice even, but it was hard. This would usually be the point where he'd get up and leave, the door slamming behind him, a punctuation to our daily script. And true to form, he'd disappear, off to who knows where, leaving me to handle everything. One day, the routine took a darker turn. I had started noticing money missing from my purse. At first, it was a few dollars here and there, but then whole bills began to vanish. One evening, after double-checking my cash, I confronted him. Tom, have you been taking money from my purse? He looked away, then back at me. Needed some cash for beer. Beer? Really, Tom? You're taking cash like a thief now? How dare you call me a thief? I'm your husband, he shot back, voice rising. Before we could go any further, Susan barged in, her timing impeccable as always. She must have caught the tail end of our argument because her face was thunderous as she laid into me. Emily, all you care about is money. Can't you see the man is struggling? You should be supporting him, not accusing him. Support him? By letting him steal from me? What about Jack? What about our bills? My voice was rising too, the stress of the last few months boiling over. Tom had slumped back on the couch, tuning out the women in his life arguing over him, his gaze fixed on some invisible point on the floor. The argument spun out, leaving a cold silence in its wake. Susan left in a huff, and Tom just sat there, saying nothing, doing nothing. Jack fell ill just as the last light of summer faded. His fever spiked one evening, and no amount of soothing or cool cloths seemed to help. I sat by his bed, thermometer in hand, my heart sinking with each beat that confirmed the fever wasn't breaking. Tom was no help, as usual, sprawled on the couch, lost in the glow of his phone. Tom, can you at least check if we have any more fever reducer in the medicine cabinet? I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. He grunted something unintelligible and slowly hoisted himself up, but I knew I'd be faster. Jack was whimpering softly, his small hands clutching mine, and every second counted. I brushed a kiss on his forehead and hurried to the kitchen myself. The next morning, the doctor confirmed it was more serious than a simple cold. He needs medication, and we should run some tests. Better to be safe, he advised, scribbling on his pad. Tests meant money. More money than what was left after all the bills and Tom's unchecked spending. I pulled up my banking app, heart hammering as I transferred the last of our savings for Jack's treatment, including the $700 usually reserved for Susan. It was the only option. No sooner had I made the decision, Susan stormed in, her face thunderous. "Emily, where's my money? It's the first of the month, you know." I was repacking Jack's small backpack, ready for another trip to the doctor. "Susan, I had to use that money for Jack. He's very sick, we need it for his tests and medication." Susan's eyes narrowed, her lips thinning into a harsh line. "You expect me to believe you don't have money elsewhere?" "That was my money, Emily. I need it." I stepped back, holding up my hands, the protective mother in me rising fast. "Jack comes first. He's a child, he's sick, and he needs his mother to take care of him. I'm not going to apologize for that." "Well, I should have known you'd pull something like this. Keeping money from me for that boy." Susan spat the words out like they were poison. That stung, and my temper flared. "That boy? Susan, that's your grandson. How can you be so cold?" "I don't need lessons from you, Emily. If you don't pay me by tomorrow, you'll regret it," she hissed, her face twisted in anger. The threat hung in the air, heavy and dark. But seeing Jack, so small and frail in the other room, gave me the strength I needed. "Get out, Susan. Now. I won't have you threatening me in my own house, not today, not ever." Susan looked like she might say more, but the look in my eyes must have told her all she needed to know. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a silence that rang in my ears. Tom dressed in silence and followed her out. I returned to Jack's side, my hands trembling as I smoothed back his hair. He looked up at me, his eyes trusting and filled with a pain that broke my heart. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here," I whispered, kissing his forehead, my decision cemented in my heart. The days blurred into a haze of hospital visits and restless nights. Tom's absence in the household was almost a silent relief, no arguments, no disdainful looks. But then, a week of uneasy quiet was shattered. I noticed it first on a mundane Thursday afternoon. Checking my bank app for the balance, my stomach dropped. Several large withdrawals had wiped out nearly everything we had left. Panic tightening in my chest, I scrolled through the transaction history, my heart racing, every withdrawal a stab of betrayal. Calling Tom was useless, he didn't pick up, hadn't picked up for days. With a heavy hand, I blocked the card, cutting off his plundering. It was only then, amidst the swirling chaos of my life, that I realized how deep Tom's selfishness ran. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Exactly 1 week after he vanished, Tom returned, not alone, but with Susan swaggering by his side. They found me in the living room, floor littered with Jack's toys and medical receipts. "Emily, we have news," Tom announced, an unfamiliar smirk playing on his lips. "I won the lottery. $10 million. And before you ask, no, you won't see a dime of it. I'm filing for divorce." The room spun. "You what? Tom, you can't be serious. What about Jack?" His mother laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, Emily, always playing the saint. You've underestimated my son all these years. Now he's rich, and you're nothing. He'll find someone better, younger." Tom nodded, picking up a duffel bag by the door. "Yeah, I'm moving out. To live with Mom. You'll manage on your own, won't you? You were so good at it." Susan put her arm around him, leading him to the door. "Let's leave the gold digger to her mess. We have better places to be." As the door slammed shut, the finality of the situation crashed down on me. Betrayal, abandonment, theft, Tom had left me with nothing but challenges and heartache. But as the initial shock waned, a fiery resolve began to build within me. They thought they could crush me, leave me broken and destitute? No, I wouldn't let this stand. I called my lawyer, my voice firm. Tom used our money to buy that ticket. I want to contest the winnings. My lawyer was cautious, but supportive. It's going to be a tough fight, Emily, but we'll give it everything we've got. As I hung up, the weight of the journey ahead settled on my shoulders. But there was a strength in me that had been forged in the fires of this betrayal. For myself, for Jack, I would fight. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for survival, I was fighting for justice. The days leading up to the court hearing were a whirlwind of preparation. My lawyer, Mr. Daniels, was meticulous. We gathered every piece of evidence, bank statements, financial records, everything that showed the flow of money from my account to sustain our household while Tom contributed nothing. Emily, it's a solid case. The fact that he used your bank card to buy the lottery ticket is our ace, Mr. Daniels reassured me as we sat in his office surrounded by piles of paperwork. As the court date approached, tension simmered just below the surface of my daily routine. Then, 2 days before we were due in court, Tom and Susan showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen, Jack playing at my feet, when I heard the familiar slam of the car door. They burst through the door, faces red with anger. "You're actually going through with this, Emily? You're suing your own husband?" Tom roared, his voice filling the small space. Susan was quick to chime in, her words sharp and venomous. "Greedy, that's what you are. Trying to take what doesn't belong to you." I stood my ground, feeling Jack press against my leg, seeking comfort. "It's not just Tom's money. He bought the ticket with our funds that I provided because he couldn't. You just can't stand to see me happy, can you? Always need to be in control, Emily." Tom's face was twisted in a sneer. "It's not about control, Tom. It's about what's fair. You walked out, remember? You and your mother laughed at me, said I'd be left with nothing." My voice was steady, fueled by the flicker of anger that had been ignited by their accusations. The shouting match could have escalated, but I wasn't about to let that happen in front of Jack. "You need to leave. Now. We'll settle this in court," I said firmly. Their departure was loud and messy, but the house felt cleaner even after they left. I hugged Jack close, whispering assurances that everything would be all right. In the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Tom sat across from us, his lawyer whispering in his ear, while Susan glared daggers in my direction. When Mr. Daniels presented the bank statements and financial records, I felt a small victory each time Tom's lawyer faltered in response. The judge listened intently, his gaze often lingering on Tom as the evidence of his financial dependency on me was laid bare. The purchase of the lottery ticket with funds from a joint account, effectively making it a marital asset, is central to this case, Mr. Daniels argued convincingly. Tom tried to argue his case, his voice booming in the quiet of the courtroom. "I was the one who bought the ticket. It was my decision, my luck. But not your money, Mr. Thompson. And luck, unfortunately for you, does not override the law," the judge replied, his tone indicating his impatience with Tom's interruptions. After hours of back and forth, the judge delivered the verdict. "Considering the evidence presented, it is clear that Mr. Thompson was financially dependent on Mrs. Thompson during the period of the ticket purchase. The ticket, therefore, is considered a marital asset. I award 3/4 of the lottery winnings to Mrs. Thompson and 1/4 to Mr. Thompson." Tom's face went white, Susan looked like she might faint. They were stunned, disbelief etched across their features. A few months after the court decision, life settled into a new, calmer rhythm. The divorce papers came through, officially ending what had become a draining chapter in my life. It was time to focus on the future, a future that now seemed a lot brighter thanks to the court's decision. I had heard countless stories of lottery winners who blew through their fortunes with nothing to show for it. Determined not to fall into that trap, I reached out to an old college friend, Mike, who had made a name for himself in the world of investment. "Mike, I need some advice on how to handle this situation wisely. I don't want to end up another cautionary tale," I confessed over coffee one brisk morning. He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Emily, it's smart of you to think this way. Let's look at some stable investments that can offer you growth and security. We pored over charts and projections, discussing various companies that showed potential. Mike's expertise was invaluable, and by the end of our meeting, I felt confident about where to invest. I think a mix of tech and renewable energy stocks would be a solid choice for part of the funds. And putting a chunk into a savings account for Jack's education sounds perfect, Mike suggested, marking some options on his tablet. Meanwhile, Tom and Susan's handling of their share was the talk of the town. Tom had splurged on a flashy new sports car and was often seen driving around, showing off to anyone who'd pay attention. Susan adorned herself with expensive jewelry and clothes, reveling in her newfound status. One afternoon, while picking up Jack from school, I bumped into an acquaintance who couldn't wait to share the latest gossip. Emily, have you seen Tom's new car? It's worth a fortune. And Susan, she's living it up like there's no tomorrow, she said, her eyes wide with excitement. I just shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. Yeah, I heard. But that's their choice. I'm just focusing on what's best for Jack and me. At home, I updated my financial plans, checking in with Mike regularly. Each decision, each investment, was a step towards a stable and secure life. I was determined to give Jack every opportunity one possibly could, without the shadow of past mistakes looming over us. Mommy, when I grow up, can I go to college like you did? Jack asked one evening as we looked at his newly opened savings account online. Absolutely, sweetheart. And you'll have the funds to do so without worrying about money, I assured him, pulling him into a hug. That's cool. I want to learn lots of things, he said, his eyes bright with the promise of endless possibilities. Gradually, life had normalized into a comfortable routine. Jack was thriving at school, and our investments were performing well. I had managed to put the past behind us, focusing on our future. But then, the past decided to make an unwelcome return. I heard it first from a close friend during a casual coffee meetup. Emily, have you heard about Tom? He's lost everything, his car, the money. Heard he's neck deep in gambling debts now. I sipped my coffee, masking my surprise. Really? That's unfortunate. And Susan, she's been pawning off her jewelry. Seems they're both hitting rock bottom after all that show off, she added, shaking her head in disbelief. It wasn't long before Tom himself stood on my doorstep, a shadow of his former self. His expensive clothes gone, replaced by worn jeans and a faded jacket. His eyes, once so full of arrogance, now held a desperate, hollow look. Emily, can we talk? His voice was hoarse, as if he'd rehearsed this speech 100 times. I hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Jack was at a friend's house, so we had privacy, not that I wanted to prolong his visit. Tom took a deep breath, looking around the living room as if seeing it for the first time. I've lost everything, Emily. The money, the car. I've got nothing left. And I miss my family. I miss you. I raised an eyebrow, unable to keep the skepticism out of my voice. You miss the money, you mean? No, it's not just that. I've been doing some thinking, a lot actually. I was hoping, maybe we could start over? His gaze was pleading, but all I could see were the years of lies and negligence. I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than amusement. Start over? After everything you put us through? You walk out, call me a gold digger, waste your fortune, and now you want to come back like nothing happened? He shuffled his feet, looking anywhere but at me. I know I messed up, Emily. I really do. But I'm willing to change, to be better. Tom, you walked out when you thought you didn't need us anymore. You showed your true colors. Now, you're just sorry because you're broke and alone, I said, my voice firm. He looked deflated, the reality of my words hitting him hard. So, that's it then? There's no chance? Tom, I forgave you a long time ago for my peace, not so you could come back whenever you hit rock bottom. Jack and we're doing great, and I intend to keep it that way. With a heavy sigh, he turned and left, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go, feeling a chapter firmly closing behind him. As I picked up Jack later that day, his laughter filling the car, I knew beyond a doubt that no amount of lottery fortune could ever compare to the wealth we had in each other. Our journey hadn't been easy, but it was ours, and it was filled with real, priceless love.